My mother was the queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity.
Right in the middle of Buckingham Palace's tightly controlled world, a shocking storm was already building behind closed doors that nobody outside could even imagine yet. Queen Camilla allegedly pushed forward with a bold and highly controversial move involving one of the late Queen's most iconic tiaras, sparking whispers that something far deeper and more dangerous was unfolding inside the palace walls. Reports suggest she didn't just request the Rose of Windsor tiara in a casual way, but demanded it in a manner that felt more like an expectation than a polite royal request, and that alone sent quiet tension rippling through the staff rooms and corridors. This wasn't just about jewelry, it was about power, legacy, and image, and every single person inside the palace understood that one wrong decision that night could shake the monarchy in front of the entire world. Princess Catherine was already being positioned, knowingly or not, at the center of this storm, with every detail of her appearance carrying symbolic weight that could be twisted in seconds by cameras and commentators waiting outside. Princess Anne, known for her strict discipline and no-nonsense approach, was the one who responded to Camilla's request, and she did it without emotion, without hesitation, and without giving anything away. She reportedly told Camilla that the Rose of Windsor tiara was not available, explaining it was under maintenance with royal jewelers, and she shut the conversation down instantly like a locked steel door. Camilla accepted it on the surface, nodding and stepping away, but inside the palace atmosphere, nothing was ever truly finished that easily, and everyone around her could feel the tension still hanging in the air like a warning sign. Word travels fast in palace circles, and within hours, whispers began spreading that the tiara wasn't just being serviced, but might actually be prepared for Princess Catherine to wear at the upcoming state gala. That single rumor changed everything instantly, because in royal symbolism, even a suggestion like that carries more weight than an official announcement shouted from a balcony. For Camilla, the idea that Catherine could appear in front of a global audience wearing a jewel tied so closely to Queen Elizabeth II was not just uncomfortable. It was potentially humiliating in a deeply public and permanent way. Behind the polished smiles and controlled expressions, palace insiders reportedly noticed Camilla shift emotionally, not in an explosive way, but in a quiet, calculated internal change that signaled she was no longer simply accepting the situation. No shouting, no confrontation, just silence that felt heavier than words. And that silence is often where the most dangerous decisions begin inside royal environments. At the same time, Princess Catherine was navigating her own pressure in a completely different way, staying composed, controlled, and almost invisible in her emotional expression, because she understood exactly what was at stake. She was aware of the tiara situation and its symbolic meaning, but she also understood something even more important. In this world, showing desire is the fastest way to become a target. Every movement she made during preparations was carefully measured, every interaction with staff calm and precise, because any visible reaction could be used against her later in headlines and commentary. She wasn't just getting ready for a gala, she was navigating a psychological battlefield where even a facial expression could be turned into a story. And yet, beneath that calm surface, she was fully aware that the tiara, if it came her way, would not simply be a gift, but a spotlight that could either elevate her or expose her. The palace was already tense, but what nobody realized was that something far more serious was already unfolding behind the scenes. Something that would eclipse every internal disagreement almost instantly. The Rose of Windsor tiara, a piece tied deeply to royal legacy and history, suddenly disappeared during what was supposed to be a secure internal transfer. It didn't vanish in a dramatic explosion of chaos or forced entry, but in a way that made it even more disturbing, because there were no obvious signs of anything wrong at all. No alarms, no broken seals, no unauthorized access alerts, nothing that would normally explain how something so valuable could simply be gone. The discovery of the empty case didn't trigger immediate panic, but instead a chilling silence, because experienced staff instantly understood that this was not a mistake or accident. Accidents leave confusion, but this was clean, precise, and almost surgical in its execution, which suggested planning, timing, and inside knowledge. The palace immediately shifted into quiet emergency mode, locking down movements internally while avoiding any external signs that could alert the press waiting outside the gates. Security teams pulled access logs, checked internal routes, reviewed staff movements, and began reconstructing every single minute of the timeline with intense precision. Meanwhile, Catherine received the news during final preparations, and it was delivered quietly, without drama, but the impact was immediate and heavy. She paused for a moment, not outwardly panicked, but internally calculating every possible outcome that could unfold from this situation. Because if the tiara didn't reappear, replacements would be required, and any substitute would instantly become a point of scrutiny under global media attention. And in her position, even a perfectly innocent choice could be twisted into something damaging without warning, without evidence, and without fairness. She knew that the world outside did not wait for facts. It waited for narratives, and once a narrative formed, it could stick permanently no matter what the truth actually was. Every detail of that evening suddenly became more fragile, more exposed, and more dangerous than anyone had planned for. And still, the most unsettling realization remained hanging in the background of everything unfolding inside the palace. She wasn't just preparing for a gala anymore. She was preparing to stand in front of a world that could turn a single object, a single image, into a permanent symbol of controversy and suspicion. And the thought that lingered most heavily was that in this environment, innocence did not guarantee safety, and visibility always came with a cost that could not be avoided. What unfolded inside the palace investigation wasn't random at all. It looked carefully engineered from the very start, like someone had mapped out every move with chilling precision. Security teams pored over surveillance footage with razor-sharp focus, fully aware that what they were dealing with wasn't just a missing object, but a direct threat to the stability and image of the entire monarchy. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Clean footage, no panic, no rushing figures, no visible chaos. But that calm surface was exactly what made everything feel more suspicious. Then they noticed it. A small but deliberate gap in the camera coverage, a moment so perfectly timed it almost felt invisible unless you were already looking for it. That blind spot wasn't natural, not by a long shot, because it was just wide enough for a secure object to pass through without ever being recorded. It wasn't an accident or technical glitch. It was precision. Calculated silence inside a system designed to never fail. Someone inside the palace clearly understood the architecture of the security system and, more importantly, knew exactly how to bend it without triggering alarms. That realization changed everything instantly, because now this wasn't just about theft. It was about inside access, trust, and betrayal at the highest level. When Princess Anne entered the room where the investigation was being coordinated, the entire atmosphere tightened immediately, like the air itself had become heavier. She didn't offer comfort or speculation. She brought structure, discipline, and cold clarity to a situation that was already spiraling. Her first question cut straight through everything. Who had physical access to the box during that specific interval? No hesitation, no emotion, just direct command, the kind that forces truth out into the open, whether people are ready or not. From that moment, every name connected to that timeline was pulled, reviewed, and cross-checked, and the investigation started tightening like a net closing in. Catherine stayed deliberately distant from the process, fully aware that even curiosity in a situation like this could be twisted into suspicion in the wrong narrative. She continued preparing for the evening, speaking only when necessary, moving with controlled calm, but internally she was building a picture from scattered fragments. And the picture forming in her mind wasn't vague at all. It was disturbingly clear. Camilla wanted the tiara, Anne refused, Rumors spread that Catherine would wear it, and now the tiara had disappeared. Coincidences usually have rough edges, gaps, inconsistencies, things that don't align, but this situation had none of that. Every piece fit too neatly, almost uncomfortably so, like someone had already decided how the story should unfold. As the investigation widened beyond palace walls, security teams followed the trail with methodical discipline, moving through leads that slowly pointed away from the palace itself. That trail eventually led to a residential property outside royal grounds, a location that immediately shifted the entire tone of the investigation. It was the home of Laura Lopez, Camilla's daughter, and the moment that name surfaced in the room, the silence became unbearable. Nobody needed to say what they were thinking because the implication was already loud enough on its own. If the trail was correct, then the connection behind it was impossible to ignore, and everyone in that room understood what that meant. When investigators entered the property, what they discovered removed any remaining doubt that this was anything accidental or harmless. The Rose of Windsor tiara was there, placed carefully, not hidden in panic, not tossed aside, but stored with intention, like it was waiting for something. That detail alone suggested planning, patience, and control, not chaos or confusion. But what they found next escalated everything far beyond a simple recovery of stolen property. Alongside the original tiara, there was a replica, an expertly crafted duplicate designed with frightening attention to detail. This wasn't a cheap imitation or rushed copy. It was precise, polished, and clearly built by someone who understood exactly how it would be seen under gala lighting. Someone had studied how the lights would hit every surface, how cameras would capture reflections, and how the audience would perceive it from a distance. That level of planning pointed to intention, not impulse. And when the investigators reconstructed the full picture, the plan itself became disturbingly clear. The original tiara would be swapped with the replica before the event. Catherine would wear it unknowingly, and the entire world would see it happen in real time. At first, nothing would seem wrong, just elegance, ceremony, and royal tradition playing out in front of global cameras. But later, at the right moment, the truth would be released. And in that moment, everything would collapse into scandal. Catherine wearing a fake tiara at a major royal event would instantly become global headlines. No explanation needed, no context required. Questions would flood in immediately. Did she know? Did she approve it? Was it negligence or something worse? And in the world of public perception, those questions are often more powerful than answers. When Laura Lopez was confronted with the findings, her reaction shattered any remaining possibility of denial. Unlike seasoned royal figures trained to control every expression, she didn't have that emotional armor. What investigators saw wasn't confusion. It was exposure, raw and unfiltered, the kind that reveals truth without needing words. At that point, the investigation was no longer guessing. It was confirming. This wasn't a misunderstanding, and it wasn't some harmless scheme gone wrong. It was structured, intentional, and executed with proximity to the heart of royal life itself. The findings were taken directly to Clarence House, where Princess Anne delivered the evidence with complete seriousness, understanding the weight it carried. Because this wasn't just about a missing jewel anymore. It was about a potential constitutional-level crisis forming inside the institution. When King Charles reviewed everything laid out before him, the shift in his expression was immediate and unmistakable. For a brief moment, the composure of monarchy gave way to something far more human: shock, disappointment, and the realization that internal tension had escalated into something far more dangerous. His first instinct was severe: remove Camilla from the gala entirely and erase her presence from the event, not as punishment alone, but as a symbolic statement to the world that the institution was reacting decisively. But Prince William stepped in, not to defend Camilla, but to control the fallout. Because removing her suddenly would not contain the damage, it would amplify it instantly. A disappearance without explanation would become its own story, and the press outside would fill in every blank with speculation. And in that environment, speculation spreads faster than truth ever can. So the decision shifted. Camilla would still attend, but in a controlled, limited presence, designed to reduce visibility rather than enhance it. No spotlight moments, no central positioning, no narrative dominance, just controlled appearance without influence. When Camilla was finally shown the evidence, her composure began to crack for the first time, not in dramatic outburst, but in something far more telling: realization. Because across the room, Catherine's presence carried something unspoken but undeniable. And in that silence between them, both women understood exactly what had failed. The plan had collapsed completely. And Camilla's deepest fear wasn't punishment. It was irrelevance. Not being removed violently, but being pushed to the edges of a moment she once expected to control. That fear settled heavily as the gala moved forward. To the outside world, everything looked flawless. Lights, elegance, diplomacy, and royal precision on full display. But behind that polished surface, a quiet sentence was already being delivered without words. Catherine entered the ballroom, and the atmosphere shifted instantly around her. The rose of Lindsay tiara rested in her hair with calm authority, like it had always belonged there and never been in question at all. She didn't announce it, she didn't highlight it, she simply wore it, and that alone was enough. The cameras reacted immediately, locking onto her presence, capturing every angle as if the room itself had chosen its focus. William stayed close beside her, not casually, but intentionally. His proximity sent a clear message without a single word that she was not isolated, not vulnerable, and not alone in that space. In the silent language of royal appearances, that closeness wasn't just personal. It was protection, made visible under global lights. Charles moved through the evening like a man performing control on autopilot, carrying himself with the practiced calm of someone who has learned how to rule without letting anything crack through his face. Every step looked smooth, every glance carefully measured, but underneath that polished surface, there was pressure building that only a few people could ever truly sense. Those who knew how to read him understood immediately that he was carrying something heavy, something that could not be spoken out loud in that room full of cameras, diplomats, and carefully arranged smiles. He knew exactly what had happened. He knew exactly who was involved. And he knew the system around him had forced a silence that felt almost unnatural. The institution demanded stability above everything else, even above truth. And that meant allowing the architect of the entire scheme to remain inside the same building, standing there in formal wear, shaking hands, smiling casually at foreign dignitaries, like nothing beneath the surface had been shaken at all. That knowledge sat inside him like a weight that would not move no matter how much he tried to focus on the rhythm of the evening. Meanwhile, Camilla moved through the same halls, the same conversations, the same polished social flow. But something had shifted in how the entire space responded to her presence. No one said it openly, no one pointed or made it obvious, but the choreography of the room had changed in a way that did not require instructions to be spoken aloud. She was always slightly off-center, always just outside the natural focus point where attention gathered without effort. Cameras found other angles. Groups naturally shifted away from placing her at the middle of anything important. And even conversations seemed to form just far enough away that she was present, but not positioned as a core part of the visual story being created in real time. No single person was visibly excluding her, and that was exactly what made it so effective and so difficult to challenge. If it had been direct, it would have been obvious, traceable, confrontable, but instead, it was layered through dozens of small, almost invisible decisions, each one harmless on its own, but together forming something undeniable and complete. She was there, but also not there in the moments that mattered most. Every time a major photograph was arranged, she ended up at the edge of the frame. Every time an important exchange happened at the center of attention, she was positioned just far enough away that including her would require someone to deliberately correct it. And no one did. No one made that effort at all. The room had already received its silent instructions, and the institution carried them out with the kind of precision that does not need words or reminders, only habit and history. This was not new behavior for a place like this. It was simply refined behavior, perfected over time, the kind that operates quietly and efficiently, without ever needing acknowledgement. Later that night, when the lights finally softened, when the guests filtered out, and the structure of the evening began to collapse back into silence, Catherine returned to her quarters. The room was quieter now, almost too quiet after the intensity of what had just unfolded. She removed the tiara with steady, careful hands, each movement controlled like she was handling something far more symbolic than metal and gemstones. There was no celebration in her expression, no visible relief, no emotional release that the world might expect after surviving something so carefully engineered against her. Instead, there was exhaustion, deep and controlled, the kind that builds when you move through danger without ever allowing it to show on your face for even a second. She placed the piece down slowly, deliberately, like she was closing a chapter no one else fully understood had even been written. Only then did she allow herself a private moment of clarity, a quiet recognition of the full scale of what had actually been aimed at her that night. Because this was never just about jewelry, not in a place like this, not in an environment built on symbols and perception. Jewelry here was never just decoration. It was influence, narrative, and legacy all tied into one visible object. This was about who gets seen, who gets centered, and who gets remembered when the world later looks back at photographs and replayed moments from nights like this. Someone had decided that Catherine should not own that moment. Someone had gone far enough to commission a replica, to coordinate a theft carefully hidden behind institutional layers, and to move the most symbolically important piece of royal heritage through a private residential location outside the palace itself, all in an attempt to reshape the story before it was ever frozen in public memory. The plan had been bold, extremely calculated, and built on the assumption that timing and secrecy would hold long enough to change perception. But it failed completely in execution. Still, Catherine understood something deeper than simple victory or failure. Failure does not erase intent, and people who reach that far do not simply stop when they miss. They adapt. They study what went wrong. They look for weak points that still exist, even after exposure. And they wait, because patience inside this world is often more powerful than action. King Charles spent the hours after the gala in a silence that was not peaceful at all, but heavy and crowded, filled with thoughts that pressed in from every direction without resolution. He had always known that bringing Camilla fully into the structure of the monarchy would require time, patience, and careful balancing of public perception and internal resistance. He had lived through years of criticism, shifting narratives, and institutional discomfort surrounding that choice. But what he was facing now was not public opinion or historical tension. This was internal fracture. This was someone inside the system using proximity and access to target another member of the royal household through calculated action rather than public conflict. Not speeches, not media narratives, but something far more controlled and far more dangerous in its subtlety. If it had succeeded, Catherine would have stood in front of the world carrying an image crafted by deception, and the institution itself would have been forced to absorb the consequences without being able to openly acknowledge the cause. The question Charles could not escape kept returning over and over again in that silence. What does a king do when the truth involves someone close to him? But the role he holds requires him to preserve unity above all else. Even when unity itself feels fractured beneath the surface, there is no clean answer, only choices that each carry their own kind of damage. And so decisions inside the palace are often not about solving problems completely, but about choosing which version of damage is survivable and which is not. Backstage, the situation involving Laura Lopez was handled with quiet precision. No public statement, no announcement, no visible acknowledgement that anything had even occurred. Instead, there was simply removal, careful, controlled, and absolute. She was taken out of the inner structure that determines access, proximity, and trust. Doors that had once opened without hesitation were now closed without explanation. Invitations that used to appear automatically stopped coming altogether. Every familiar pathway she once had inside the institution simply disappeared, replaced by silence. There would be no courtroom spectacle, no public confrontation, because the institution cannot afford that kind of exposure. But there would also be no return to normal life inside those walls. In this system, consequences are not always loud or legal. They are slow, quiet, and permanent. Distance becomes the sentence, and separation becomes final, in a way no document ever needs to confirm. So what does all of this leave behind? It leaves behind a monarchy that survived a crisis most of the world will never even realize happened. It leaves behind a princess who walked through a high-pressure night wearing one of the most symbolically powerful pieces in royal history and never allowed the pressure to show on camera for even a second. It leaves behind a queen consort who placed everything into a plan that demanded perfect execution at every stage, only to watch it collapse completely in private, where consequences hit harder than any public failure ever could. It leaves behind a king now forced to manage a household where tension is no longer quiet background noise, but something active, something that cannot be ignored or smoothed over with tradition alone. And it leaves behind a question that refuses to settle. Camilla has been pushed aside before, underestimated before, and she has survived situations that would have ended most people's influence entirely. So does she step back now into the reduced space the institution seems to be shaping for her? Or does she wait, quietly absorbing everything, studying every shift, preparing for a moment when conditions change again? Was Laura Lopez fully aware of what she was part of? Or was she caught in something larger than she understood, reacting too late when consequences finally closed in? And will the evidence sitting quietly in protected hands one day become something far more powerful than it appears now? A tool for leverage in a future no one can clearly see yet? Will King Charles eventually reach a point where the silence he is maintaining becomes heavier than the truth it is holding back, forcing a decision that can no longer be delayed? These are not abstract questions inside an institution like this. They are ongoing pressures that never fully disappear. What remains clear is this. On one night, watched by millions, a woman wore a tiara that was allegedly targeted, replicated, and used as part of a plan meant to undermine her position. She wore it anyway. She carried it through the entire evening with complete control. And she never let the pressure break her composure for even a moment. And afterward, she returned in silence and placed it down without ceremony or announcement, because in that world, the most powerful victories are never the ones shouted about. They are the ones that remain unspoken. The most dangerous force inside Buckingham Palace was never what stood outside the gates. It was always what built up quietly inside the walls, where jealousy, silence, and power move in ways no camera fully captures. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happens next in this tension-filled struggle? And how far do you think these quiet power shifts will really go? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next in this unfolding story.